The morning Hana arrived at Kepler 442 research station, 3 alien scientists made bets on how long she would last. The tall reptilian named Vrex gave her 2 weeks. The crystalline being called Quillith predicted 1 month. The insect-like moth refused to bet at all, saying it felt cruel to wager on something so obvious. They all agreed on one thing. The human was far too fragile for real scientific work. Hana stood barely 5 feet tall in the massive arrival bay. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple tie. She carried one bag over her shoulder and walked with a slight limp that made Vrex's inner eyelids flicker with concern. When she smiled at them, her face looked young and soft. She seemed like she might break if someone spoke too loudly. "Dr. Kim Hana reporting for the Xenobiology Department," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. Vrex towered over her at nearly 8 feet. His scales gleamed blue-black under the station lights. "Welcome. I am Chief Researcher Vrex. We have prepared safe assignments for you. Nothing too demanding." Hana's smile didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "I appreciate your concern. I'm ready to begin whenever you need me." The first 2 weeks proved Vrex right to worry, or so he thought. Hana moved carefully through the laboratory. She took longer breaks than other researchers. Sometimes her hands shook when she lifted heavy equipment. She never complained, but he saw her wince when she thought no one was watching. They gave her simple tasks: organizing samples, running basic tests, data entry, work that kept her safe behind thick glass and solid doors. Hana accepted every assignment without protest. She worked longer hours than anyone else. She double-checked everything. Her reports were perfect, detailed, and insightful in ways that surprised even Quillith. "The human sees patterns," Quillith admitted one day, their crystalline form chiming softly. "She understands predator behavior better than our senior researchers." "She reads about it safely," Vrex replied. "That is different from facing it." On her 15th day, Hana noticed something wrong. The creatures in Containment Cell 7 were acting strange. They came from a planet called Kessler 9, a world so dangerous that 3 expeditions had vanished there without trace. The creatures were called render beasts, 8 feet of muscle, 6 limbs ending in claws, and mouths full of teeth designed to tear through armor. "The containment field is weakening," Hana told Vrex. "The energy signature shows fluctuations every 40 minutes. The beasts are testing it." Vrex checked her readings. Everything looked normal to him. "The system shows green across all monitors. You are seeing problems that do not exist. With respect, your monitors are wrong. These are apex predators. They're intelligent. They're waiting for a pattern. You have been here 2 weeks, Dr. Kim. I have been studying these creatures for 2 years. Return to your data entry." Hana opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She bowed slightly and walked away. But she didn't return to her station. She went to find Park Daeun, the only other human on the station. Daeun was young, just 24, with bright eyes and quick hands. He worked in engineering and missed Earth food terribly. When Hana found him, he was trying to recreate kimchi using alien vegetables. "I need you to check something," Hana said. Unofficially, Daeun looked up from his fermentation experiment. "That tone means trouble. Maybe, or maybe I'm wrong and wasting your time. You're never wrong about predators. What do you need?" 2 hours later, Daeun confirmed her fears. The containment field for Cell 7 had a flaw in its backup system. It would hold under normal circumstances. But if the creatures pushed at exactly the right frequency, at exactly the right time, the field would collapse for nearly 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. "We need to tell someone," Daeun said. "I tried. Vrex doesn't believe me." Hana stared at the data on Daeun's screen. "How long until the next window?" "If the pattern holds, about 6 hours. Can you fix it?" "Not without authorization. The system is locked. I'd need Vrex's approval to even access it." Hana closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were hard. "Then we make sure we're not near that section when it happens." But the station had other plans. At hour 5, an automated message summoned all xenobiology staff to the main research wing for mandatory equipment inspection. Hana's heart sank. The main research wing was directly adjacent to Containment Cell 7. She found Vrex in the corridor outside the cell. Through the transparent aluminum wall, 3 render beasts paced back and forth. Their 6 legs moved in perfect coordination. Their eyeless heads swept the space around them, sensing heat and movement through organs humans had no names for. "Dr. Kim, help Moth organize the scanning equipment," Vrex said without looking at her. "Chief Researcher, I really think we should move this inspection to another time. Your concern is noted. Begin work, please. Hana's hands were shaking and not from her old injury. She knew what was coming. She could feel it the way she used to feel storms coming in the mountains back home. The way she'd felt that day 16 years ago when the tiger had been watching from the trees. She positioned herself near Daeun. It's going to happen soon, she whispered. We should run. They'll just think we're cowards. No one will listen to us ever again. Better than being dead. You can go. I won't think less of you. Daeun looked at her for a long moment. You're not leaving, are you? Someone has to prove I was right. Otherwise, next time more people die. The lights flickered, just for a second, so brief that most people didn't even notice. The render beast noticed. They hit the containment field together, all three at once, at the exact frequency that would cause the flaw to spike. The field shimmered, held, then vanished. For 3 seconds, nothing stood between 8-foot predators and the researchers in the corridor. 3 seconds was enough. The beasts moved like lightning. One leaped at Vrex, one charged at Moth, and one, the largest, turned its eyeless face directly toward Hana and Daeun. Hana didn't freeze. She didn't scream. She grabbed Daeun's arm and pulled him sideways into a side passage. Run when I tell you. Not before. What are you going to do? Something stupid. The render beast followed them into the narrow passage. Its claws sparked against the metal walls. Its breath came in sharp, hot bursts. It smelled like copper and rot. Hana pulled a small laser cutter from her belt. The tool was meant for opening sample containers. It had maybe enough power to annoy the creature. Hana, that won't stop it, I know. Get ready to run, the beast charged. Hana waited until it was 5 feet away. Then she did something that made Daeun's blood turn cold. She ran toward it. The creature's instincts were perfect for normal prey. Prey ran away. Prey tried to escape. Prey made themselves small and hoped to survive. Hana made herself big. She screamed, a sound that came from deep in her chest, and she aimed the laser directly at where its eyes should have been. The beam burned into its heat-sensing organs. The beast reared back, confused. In that moment of confusion, Hana moved in closer, not away. She grabbed one of its limbs and used its own momentum to throw it off balance. The creature crashed into the wall. Now, run, she shouted at Daeun. But the beast recovered faster than she expected. Its tail whipped around and caught her across the ribs. She heard something crack. Pain exploded through her chest. She fell hard. The creature turned toward her, lowering its head. She could smell its breath, could see the rows of teeth inside its mouth. Hana did not look away. She looked directly at where its eyes should be, and she smiled. Blood ran from her mouth, but she smiled. Come on then, she whispered. Let's see which of us wants to live more. The beast lunged. Hana raised her arm to protect her throat. She knew what was coming. She'd felt teeth before. The creature's jaws closed on her forearm. Its teeth sank deep into muscle. Blood poured hot over her skin. The pain was incredible, worse than anything since the tiger. But Hana had learned something that day 16 years ago. Pain was just information. It told you that you were still alive, still fighting. With her free hand, she jammed the laser cutter into the beast's mouth and held the trigger. The smell of burning flesh filled the corridor. The creature jerked back, releasing her arm. Alarms were blaring now. Security doors were slamming shut. Containment teams were arriving with weapons. Hana climbed to her feet. Her arm hung useless at her side, blood dripping steadily onto the floor. Her ribs screamed with every breath. She could barely stand, but she stood between the beast and the direction Daeun had run. She stood her ground. The render beast watched her. It was hurt, confused, angry, but something in its predator brain recognized something in the small bleeding creature in front of it. This prey had teeth too. When the security team arrived, they found Hana still standing. The beast was backing away from her, making sounds they'd never heard it make before. Sounds almost like fear. Rex pushed through the security team. His scales had gone pale. Dr. Kim, Hana turned to look at him. Her face was white from blood loss. Her arm was a mess of torn flesh and deep puncture wounds. Her ribs were clearly broken, but her eyes were steady. The containment field failed, she said quietly. Just like I told you it would. Then she collapsed. As medical teams rushed to her, Vrex stared at the small human. At the blood. At the bite marks on her arm. At the way she'd stood her ground against a creature 3 times her size. Hana woke 3 days later in the medical bay. Her right arm was wrapped in synthetic skin that glowed faintly blue. Her ribs were bound tight. Every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. Daeun sat in a chair beside her bed, asleep with his head on his arms. When she moved, he jerked awake. "You're an idiot," he said. His eyes were red. "I know." Her voice came out rough and dry. "You could have died. But I didn't." "That's not the point." Hana tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through her chest. Daeun helped her, adjusting the bed so she could lean back without putting pressure on her ribs. "How bad is it?" she asked. 14 puncture wounds in your arm, 3 cracked ribs, internal bruising. The doctors say you'll heal, but the scars will be permanent." Hana looked at her wrapped arm. She could already feel the places where the beast's teeth had sunk in. She would carry those marks forever, just like the ones from the tiger. "The other 2 beasts?" she asked. "Contained. No one else was seriously hurt. Rex killed the one that attacked him. He's been asking about you every day." The door to her room opened. Commander Thale entered, moving with the fluid grace of his species. The Aquians looked almost human except for the gills on their necks and the way their skin shifted colors with their moods. Right now, Thale's skin was deep blue, which meant respect. "Dr. Kim," he said, bowing his head. "You saved many lives." "I just didn't run," Hana replied. "Most beings would have." "Your actions were extraordinary." He paused. "The security footage has been viewed by quite a few people. There is significant interest in how you survived that encounter." Hana's jaw tightened. "I'd prefer if that footage stayed private. I'm afraid it's too late for that. But perhaps the attention can serve a purpose." Thela moved closer. "Tell me about Earth, about growing up on a death world." So Hana told him. She told him about the Korean wilderness reserves, where her mother had worked as a conservation biologist. How they'd returned wolves and tigers and bears to the mountains. How Hana had grown up walking trails where things with teeth watched from the shadows. She told him about the day when she was 16. How she and her mother had been tracking a Siberian tiger for a research project. How the tiger had attacked without warning. How her mother had pushed Hana behind her and told her to run. "I didn't run," Hana said quietly. "I couldn't leave her. Her mother had fought the tiger with everything she had. A knife, a rock, her bare hands. She'd given Hana time to grab the tranquilizer gun from their pack. But the gun had malfunctioned, the dart misfiring. The tiger had killed her mother. Then it turned on Hana. I was terrified," Hana said. "I'd never been so scared in my life. But I remembered something my mother taught me. Predators expect fear. They expect prey to run or freeze. If you do something unexpected, sometimes you get a few extra seconds." She'd screamed at the tiger, thrown rocks, made herself look bigger. When it charged anyway, she'd used the tranquilizer gun as a club. The metal frame had broken against the tiger's skull, but the impact had stunned it. Given her enough time to find her mother's knife. "I stabbed it 11 times before it stopped moving," Hana said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "My mother was already dead. I stayed with her body for 6 hours until the rescue team found us." Thale's skin had turned purple, the color of sorrow. "I am sorry. My injuries didn't heal right. That's why I limp. The pain never fully goes away." Hana looked at her wrapped arm. "But I learned something that day. Pain is just information. It tells you that you're still alive, still able to fight." After Thale left, Daeun said, "You never told me the full story before. You never asked. Is that why you knew what to do with the render beast?" "Partly, but also because I've spent years studying Death World predators. Earth has thousands of species that kill. You learn patterns. You learn what works." She managed a small smile. "Turns out tigers and render beasts aren't that different." Over the next week, visitors came in steady streams. Quillith brought her data on predator psychology, wanting to understand her methods. Moth brought her strange alien flowers that smelled like cinnamon. Even Vrex came, though he stood awkwardly in the doorway. "I was wrong," he said finally. "I should have listened to you about the containment field." "Yes, you should have. I underestimated you because of your size and your injury. I assumed you were weak." "I am weak," Hana said. "Humans are weak. We're small and slow and we break easily, but we're also stubborn. We don't know when to quit." Rex's scales rippled, a sign of confusion. "That sounds like a terrible survival strategy." "It's the only one we have." 2 weeks after the incident, Commander Thale returned. This time he brought a formal proposal. "The Galactic Council has a problem," he said. Planet Kessler 9, where the render beasts came from, contains minerals essential for faster-than-light travel. We need those minerals, but every expedition we send disappears. We've lost over 300 researchers and soldiers. It's a death world, Hana said. Class 5, if I remember correctly. Yes, more dangerous than Earth. What does this have to do with me? We need someone who understands death world ecosystems. Someone who can survive them. Thale pulled up a holographic display. We want you to lead an expedition to Kessler 9. Hana stared at the display. The planet looked beautiful from space, green and blue like Earth, but the data told a different story. Atmospheric content lethal to most species. Temperature swings of 40 degrees in a single day. Predators in every ecological niche. Plants that dissolved flesh. Waters that burned like acid. I'm not a soldier, she said. No, but you're a survivor, and right now that's more valuable. I'll need to choose my own team. Of course. And I want full authority over mission planning and execution. No overrides from people who've never walked on a death world. Thala hesitated. That's highly irregular. So is putting someone with 3 weeks of station experience in charge of a major expedition. Either you trust me or you don't. Very well. Full authority. Hana's first choice was obvious. She asked Daeun to handle engineering and equipment. His immediate response was, "Are you insane?" "Probably. Kessler 9 killed 300 people. I know. We could die horribly." "Yes." Daeun was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "When do we leave?" Her second choice was Lee Bonhua, a human security specialist who'd been working on a mining station in the outer colonies. Bonhua was in his 30s, broad-shouldered, with scars of his own. He'd served in Korean Special Forces before joining the colonial program. When Hana explained the mission, he laughed. "A Death World expedition? Finally, something interesting. You understand we'll probably face things worse than anything on Earth?" Good, I was getting bored. For medical support, she chose Cha Minho, a battlefield medic who'd worked in 3 war zones. Minho was quiet and efficient, with steady hands and sad eyes. He asked only one question. "Will I have autonomy over medical decisions?" "Complete autonomy," Hana promised. To her surprise, both Quillith and Vrex volunteered. Quillith wanted to study Death World ecosystems firsthand. Vrex wanted to understand how humans survived them. "I need to see it," Vrex said. "I need to understand what makes your species so persistent." The final team member was an avian navigator named Xylo. He was nervous and careful, the opposite of Bonhua's confidence. But his flight calculations were flawless, and Hana valued competence over bravery. Training took 3 months. Hana designed the program herself based on survival courses from Earth. "On a death world, everything wants to kill you," she told the team on day 1. The plants, the animals, the weather, even the ground under your feet. You survive by being smarter, tougher, and more stubborn than anything trying to eat you. She taught them to ignore pain, to keep moving when exhausted, to think like prey and act like predators. The alien team members struggled. Their species had evolved on safer worlds. They had no instinct for constant danger. "Why don't you just give up when you're tired?" Silo asked after a particularly brutal endurance drill. "Because giving up means dying," Bonhua replied. "On Earth, if you stop moving, something eats you. So we learned not to stop. That's horrifying. That's life on a death world." By the end of training, the team moved like a unit. They understood protocols. They knew their roles. They'd practiced emergency procedures until they could execute them while exhausted and injured. Hana watched them with satisfaction. They weren't ready, not really. No amount of training could prepare someone for their first real death world. But they would survive. She'd make sure of it. The night before departure, Hana couldn't sleep. Her ribs had healed, but the scars on her arm were still pink and raised. She traced the bite marks with her fingers, feeling where the render beast's teeth had sunk in. Daeun found her in the observation deck, staring at the stars. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified." "You don't look terrified." "I've had practice hiding it." She glanced at him. "You can still back out. No one would blame you, could you?" "No." "Then neither can I," he sat beside her. "Why are we doing this, really?" Hana thought about that. About her mother dying in the mountains. About the tiger's teeth. About the render beast's jaws. "Because someone has to," she said finally. "Because if we don't, more people die. And because," She paused. Because I'm tired of being underestimated. I want to prove that being fragile doesn't mean being weak. The landing was rough. Kessler 9's atmosphere fought them every meter of the way. Wind shear threw the ship sideways. Rain hammered the hull with enough force to dent metal. By the time they touched down in a clearing near the mineral deposits, even Xylo's steady hands were shaking. "Welcome to paradise," Bonwa said, checking his weapons. Through the view screen, Kessler 9 looked like Earth's jungle regions, but wrong. The trees were too tall, their bark too dark. The undergrowth moved even though there was no wind. The rain fell upward in places, defying gravity in ways that made Xylo's feathers stand on end. "Atmospheric readings are stable," Dion reported. "We can breathe out there, mostly." "Mostly?" Frex asked. "There's a mild toxin in the air, nothing immediately lethal. But we'll need to limit exposure to 8-hour shifts." Hana stood and checked her gear. "Bonhua Vrex, you're with me for initial perimeter check. Everyone else stays with the ship until we confirm it's secure." "Secure is relative on a planet like this," Minho said quietly. "I know. That's why we check." The moment the airlock opened, Hana knew they were in trouble. The smell hit her first, thick and organic, like rot and growth happening at the same time. Every plant was either blooming or dying. Nothing was simply alive. The sound was worse. Earth's jungles had rhythm, patterns to their noise. Kessler 9's sounds were chaos. Screams and clicks and sounds that made her bones ache. Nothing had evolved to communicate here. Every noise was a threat or a warning. "Stay close," she said. "Watch where you step. Don't touch anything." They moved in a tight triangle, Hana at point. 30 meters from the ship, she held up a fist. Everyone froze. "There," she whispered, pointing. A creature the size of a large dog watched them from the undergrowth. It had too many legs and eyes in wrong places. Its mouth opened sideways, revealing rows of teeth like broken glass. "Is it dangerous?" Vrex whispered. "Everything here is dangerous. Question is whether it thinks we're worth the effort." The creature watched them for a long moment, then turned and vanished into the jungle. But Hana could feel other eyes on them. Dozens of them. Hundreds maybe. They were being evaluated, measured, weighed as potential prey. "Back to the ship," she said. "Slowly. Don't run." They made it back without incident, but Hana's hands were shaking when they sealed the airlock. "Well?" Diane asked. "We're on the menu," Bonwa said. "Everything out there is deciding if we're food or threat. How do we make them choose threat?" Silo asked. "We show teeth," Hana replied. They spent the first day establishing a perimeter using a combination of energy barriers and physical fortifications. Dion rigged motion sensors. Bonwa placed weapon turrets at strategic points. Minho set up the medical station in the most defensible section of their base camp. The attack started on day 2. First came small creatures testing the barriers. They died against the energy fields and their bodies dissolved in minutes, eaten by insects that appeared from nowhere. Then came something bigger. A predator that moved like a snake but had limbs that sprouted and retracted as it moved. Bonwa killed it with a pulse rifle. The sound echoed through the jungle. For a moment, everything went quiet. "Bad idea," Hana said. "Why?" "Because now everything knows we're here, and that we can be hurt." She was right. By nightfall, the attacks intensified. Creatures came from the trees, the ground, even from underground. Nothing coordinated, just individual predators seeing an opportunity. The team worked in shifts, 4 hours on watch, 4 hours rest. But rest was difficult when screams and crashes came from just beyond the barriers. On day 5, Dayan found the mineral deposits. They were in cavern systems beneath a massive rock formation. The scans showed veins of the needed minerals running deep underground. The problem was what lived above the caverns. "Those are apex shrikes," Quilith said, studying the data. "We've seen them in specimens. Pack hunters. Extremely intelligent, extremely aggressive. The shrikes nested in the rock formation. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Each one was roughly human-sized with wings that could slice through metal and beaks designed to punch through armor. "We need to get past them," Hana said. "We could use orbital bombardment," Freck suggested. "Clear the nest." "No, that could collapse the cavern system. We'd lose access to the minerals, and it would disrupt the entire ecosystem." "You're worried about the ecosystem while things are trying to eat us?" Hana looked at him steadily. "Yes, because if we disrupt it too much, it'll get worse. Much worse." Instead, she spent 3 days observing the shrikes. She barely slept, barely ate, just watched and took notes. Minho tried to force her to rest, but she refused. I need to understand them, she said. I need to know how they think. On the third night, she found it. The shrikes responded to subsonic frequencies. When juveniles called for their parents, the entire colony would mobilize. It was instinct, hardwired into their species. We can use that, she told Dayun. Can you build something that mimics the distress call? Probably. Why? Because we're going to make them think their children are in danger. They'll leave the nest. We'll have a window to get inside. That's insane, Xylo said. What if they come back early? Then we die. But it's better than bombing them and definitely dying when the ecosystem collapses. Dayun built the device in 2 days. It looked like a speaker attached to a backpack of batteries. When he tested it on low power, every shrike within 500 meters went still. It works, he said. Too well, maybe. They planned the operation for early morning when the shrikes were least active. Hana, Banwa, and Vrex would enter the caverns. Dayun would operate the device from a safe distance. Mina would stay at base camp with Quillith and Xylo ready for emergency evacuation. 4 hours, Hana said. That's all we have. Get in, map the mineral deposits, get out. And if something goes wrong? Vrex asked. Run, don't try to be a hero. Just run. The morning of the operation, Hana checked her equipment 3 times. Her ribs had healed, but they ached in the damp air. Her scarred arm throbbed. She'd been ignoring her pain medication, needing to stay sharp, Minho noticed. You should take something. You're hurting. Pain is just information. That's a stupid philosophy. It's kept me alive so far. Dayun activated the device at dawn. The effect was immediate. Every shrike in the colony took flight, screaming in distress, heading toward the source of the false juvenile call. The sky turned black with their wings. Go! Hana shouted. They ran for the cavern entrance. The opening was barely wide enough for Vrex to squeeze through. Inside, the darkness was complete. They activated light sources. The cavern walls glittered with mineral deposits. Veins of the precious materials ran through the rock like veins and flesh. It was beautiful and eerie. Start mapping, Hana ordered. We have 4 hours. Maybe less. They worked quickly using portable scanners to map the deposit locations. The caverns went deeper than expected, branching into dozens of tunnels. Some were barely passable. Others were vast chambers that echoed with dripping water. In one chamber they found bones. Not animal bones, the remains of previous expeditions. Alien skeletons still wearing the remnants of environmental suits. They got this far, Vrex said quietly. What killed them? The shrikes came back, Hana replied. They got trapped inside. 3 hours into the operation, they'd mapped 70% of the deposits. Enough to make the mission successful. Hana was about to order a retreat when Banwa found something. Hana, you need to see this. Deep in the caverns, carved into the rock, were symbols, mathematical equations, star charts, the unmistakable signs of intelligence. Someone lived here, Quillith said through the comlink, analyzing the images Banwa sent. Long ago. An advanced civilization. Hana studied the carvings. Among the equations was a warning, written in the universal language of mathematics. She worked out the translation slowly. Those who take from the teeth must pay the teeth. What does that mean? Vrex asked. Hana looked at the mineral deposits around them, at the way they ran through the rock like nerves, at the patterns that seemed almost organic. I think this planet is alive, she said. Or was. The minerals are part of it. Part of its structure. That's impossible. Is it? We found crystal beings. Silicon-based life. Why not a planet-sized organism? Before anyone could respond, Dayun's panicked voice came through the comm. They're coming back! I don't know why, but they're coming back early. You have maybe 5 minutes. Extract now, Hana ordered. Leave the equipment, just run. They ran through the caverns. Behind them, the sound of wings grew louder. The shrikes were returning to their nest, to the tunnels where the team was trapped. They made it to the main chamber when the first shrikes entered the cavern. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. The air filled with their screams. We can't reach the entrance. Banwa shouted over the noise. Hana looked around desperately. They were trapped. The shrikes were between them and freedom. The creatures circled, sharp beaks clicking, sensing easy prey. New plan, Hana said. We make them afraid of us. How? Vrex asked. Banwa, give me all the explosives. Vrex, you're going to roar, loudly. What? You're an apex predator on your world, right? So act like it. Make noise. Make yourself big. Hana took the explosive charges and started throwing them at the... 6 months after Kessler 9, Hana sat in a rehabilitation center on Earth, pushing her body through exercises that made sweat pour down her face. Her physical therapist, a patient woman named Han Jion, watched with approval as Hana completed another set of resistance training. "Your recovery is remarkable," Jion said. "Most people with injuries like yours would still be using assistance devices." Hana didn't mention that most people hadn't fought their way through 2 different Death World Predator attacks. She just nodded and moved to the next exercise. The scars from the shrikes had healed into raised pink lines across her back and shoulders. The bite marks on her leg were permanent, deep indentations where talons had sunk through muscle, combined with her older tiger scars and the render beast marks on her arm. Her body was a map of survival. She walked with a more pronounced limp now. Some days the pain was bad enough that she couldn't hide it, but she refused cybernetic enhancements. Minho had offered. Vrex had practically begged. She'd declined every time. "The pain reminds me I'm alive," she'd told them. "That's stupid," Minho had replied. "Probably. The failed Kessler 9 mission should have ended her career. They'd lost equipment, barely escaped with their lives, and hadn't retrieved a single mineral sample. By every objective measure, it was a disaster. Instead, it made her famous. The footage from their helmet cameras had leaked somehow. Military analysts across the galaxy watched the recordings, studying how the small human team survived when heavily armed expeditions had vanished. Command schools used it as training material. Xenopsychology departments analyzed every decision. People wanted to understand how Death World thinking worked, how humans could keep fighting when logic said to give up. The offers came in waves. Military contracts, corporate security positions, research grants with unlimited budgets. Everyone wanted a piece of the human who'd proven that sometimes stubbornness beat intelligence. Hana refused them all. She wasn't interested in weapons development or corporate profit. She'd become a xenobiologist to understand life, not destroy it, but she couldn't refuse Commander Thale when he came to Earth personally. He found her in the rehabilitation center, walking laps around the indoor track. Her limp was obvious, but she kept moving, steady and determined. "Dr. Kim," he said, "we need to talk." They sat in a quiet corner. Through the windows, Hana could see the Korean mountains where she'd grown up, where her mother had died, where she'd learned that teeth were part of life. "The galaxy is in trouble," Thale began. "There's a species called the Vrin, insectoid hive minds. They're expanding through colonized space. 14 settlements destroyed in 3 months. I heard. The reports are all over the news feeds. Traditional military tactics aren't working. The Vrin adapt within hours to any strategy we use. They're overwhelming us through pure numbers and coordination. That's terrible. But what does it have to do with me? I'm not a soldier." "No, but you think differently than soldiers. You survived situations that killed trained military personnel. We don't want you to fight the Vrin." Thale leaned forward. "We want you to teach others how to think like you." Hana was quiet for a long moment. "You want me to teach aliens how to be human?" "In a sense, yes. We're creating a coalition force. 200 soldiers from 15 species. They need to understand Death World combat psychology. They need to learn what you know instinctively. I'm not qualified to run military training. You're the only one qualified. You've survived multiple Death World encounters. You understand predator psychology, and you've proven you can work with multiple species." Thale pulled up a holographic display. "The Vrin are winning because they think as one. They have no individual fear, no hesitation. We need soldiers who can match that mindset through different means." Hana studied the display. The Vrin's expansion was aggressive and methodical. At the current rate, they'd reach core worlds within a year. If I do this, I design the entire program. No interference from military brass who've never seen a real predator. "Agreed. And I choose my staff." "Of course. When do we start?" 3 weeks later, Hana stood in front of 200 alien soldiers. They came from species across the galaxy. Draken, Aquean, Silicates, Avians, and a dozen others. They wore the uniforms of their respective militaries. They stood at attention with perfect discipline. They expected lectures, strategy sessions, academic discussions of tactics. Instead, Hana said, "In 1 hour, you'll be dropped into a simulated Death World environment. You'll have minimal equipment and no technological support. Survive for 24 hours. Class dismissed." The confusion was immediate. A tall Draken named Kress raised his hand. "What about briefings? Equipment checks? Strategic planning? Figure it out when you're there." That's how death worlds work. Within an hour, the soldiers were dropped into simulations based on Earth's most hostile environments: Arctic tundra, dense jungles, deserts, deep oceans. Each simulation included predators, environmental hazards, and limited resources. Hana watched from the control room as the soldiers struggled. They tried to use their military training, but it didn't apply. Their formation tactics were useless against simulated tigers. Their communication protocols broke down when they were exhausted and afraid. 70% failed in the first 6 hours. They quit or made fatal mistakes or simply collapsed from exhaustion. The remaining 30% survived, but barely. They emerged shaking, traumatized, convinced they'd made a terrible mistake joining this program. "Congratulations," Hana told them. "You passed day 1. That was a test?" One of them asked in disbelief. "No, that was introduction. Real training starts tomorrow." Li Banhua helped design the physical training. He was merciless, pushing the aliens beyond what they thought possible. Persistence runs that lasted hours. Obstacle courses completed while injured. Combat drills with no rest breaks. "On Earth, persistence hunting worked because we never stopped," he explained to the exhausted soldiers. "Prey would run until they were tired, then rest. Humans would just keep coming. Eventually, the prey had nothing left. That's what you need to learn. How to be the thing that never stops." Chaminho taught battlefield medicine, but his lessons were different from standard military medical training. He taught them to keep fighting while injured, to treat pain as information, not incapacitation, to understand that stopping meant dying. "Human soldiers can function with injuries that would disable most species," he said, "not because we don't feel pain, but because we've learned to act despite it." Park Daeun focused on improvisation, how to create weapons from nothing, how to turn the environment into an advantage, how to think creatively when standard solutions failed. "Death worlds force innovation," he told them. "When your technology fails and your training doesn't apply, you improvise. You adapt. You use whatever works." The training was brutal. More soldiers quit every day. Some filed formal complaints. Others simply disappeared in the night, unable to handle the constant stress. Kress almost died during week 3. He pushed himself too hard during an endurance run and collapsed with organ failure. Minho saved his life, but it was close. When Kress woke in the medical bay, Hana was sitting beside his bed. "You could have quit," she said. "No one would have blamed you. I considered it. Every day." Kress's scales were pale. "Why do you push us so hard?" "Because the Vryn will push harder. Because when you're facing something that wants to eat you, comfort and safety are fantasies. I need you to understand that in your bones." "I understand it now. Pain is real. Very real." Hana showed him her scars. The tiger marks from her childhood. The render beast bites. The shrike talons. "These aren't failures. They're proof I refuse to die. Every scar is a victory. Your world made you this way. Made you able to see scars as victories. Yes, and now I'm making you understand it too." By week 4, only 89 soldiers remained. But those 89 had transformed. They moved differently. With the careful awareness of prey animals, they thought differently, seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles. They'd learned the fundamental lesson of death world survival. Stubbornness beats strength every single time. The final test was a 72-hour simulation with no rest. The soldiers had to survive, complete objectives, and maintain team cohesion while exhausted, injured, and afraid. Hana watched as they worked. She saw Kress pull a teammate from a simulated river despite his own injuries. Saw an avian named Liss keep moving with a broken wing. Saw a silicate named Kree adapt tactics on the fly when their original plan failed. Finally they'd learned what it meant to be unstoppable. On the final day of training, Hana gathered all 89 graduates. They stood at attention, but there was something different about them now. They'd been broken down and rebuilt. They'd faced their limits and pushed past them. "You came here as soldiers," she said. "You leave as survivors. The difference is simple. Soldiers follow orders. Survivors do whatever it takes. When you face the Vryn, remember everything you learned here. Remember that pain is just information. Fear is just chemistry. What you do despite them is what matters." Kress raised his hand. "Will it be enough? Against the Vryn? I don't know. Maybe not, but you'll make them work for every meter. You'll make them pay in blood for every victory. And sometimes that's enough to win." Despite everything, the Vryn were still winning. The coalition forces fought better now, using the tactics Hana had taught them. They survived longer, adapted faster, refused to quit even when logic said the battle was lost. But the Vryn kept coming. Wave after wave of perfectly coordinated soldiers that learned from every encounter. 3 core worlds had been evacuated. 2 more were preparing. The Galactic Council met in emergency sessions every day, arguing about strategies that none of them truly believed would work. Hana studied the Vryn attack patterns from her office on the training station. Something bothered her about the way they fought. She'd seen similar patterns before in Earth's history: army ants, termite colonies, bee swarms. Perfect coordination but no individual initiative. They fight like a single organism, she told Vrex during one of his visits. Like the entire army is one creature with many parts. That's how hive minds work. It's their strength. It's also their weakness. Hana pulled up tactical displays. Look at how they respond to feints. They don't. They can't understand why an individual would act against group benefit. They have no concept of sacrifice plays or deliberate misdirection. How does that help us? I don't know yet. But there's something here, something about how they think that we can exploit. Over the next week, Hana requested every piece of data available on the Vryn. Battle reports, xenobiology studies, captured communications. She barely slept, living on coffee and stubborn determination. Daeun found her asleep at her desk on the 5th day. He woke her gently. "You're going to make yourself sick," he said. "I'm close to something. I can feel it." "Feel what?" Hana rubbed her eyes. The Vryn aren't expanding randomly. They're searching for something. Look at their attack patterns. They don't target the richest worlds or the most strategic locations. They target worlds with specific genetic profiles. Searching for what? A cure. I think their species is dying from a genetic disease. They're consuming other species trying to find compatible DNA that could save them. Daeun stared at the data. That's insane. And desperate. Desperation makes things dangerous. Hana stood, wincing as her leg protested. "If I'm right, we might be able to negotiate. Offer them what they need in exchange for peace." "The Council will never authorize that. They're committed to military solutions." "Then we don't ask for authorization." The plan formed quickly because it had to. The Vryn's central hive ship was deep in occupied territory. Getting there would require stealth, luck, and a small team that could move quietly. Hana assembled her original crew. Bonwa didn't hesitate. "Finally, a proper suicide mission." Minho just sighed. "I should start charging hazard pay." Daeun nodded immediately. "Obviously I'm coming." Vrex surprised her by volunteering. "You've shown me that logic isn't always the answer. Perhaps it's time I learned to be illogical." Cress volunteered too, along with 6 other graduates from the training program. They'd survived the front lines and wanted to see this through. Commander Thale found out about the plan 2 days before launch. He arrived at the training station looking furious and exhausted. "This is unauthorized, illegal, potentially catastrophic if you fail." "I know," Hana said calmly. "I should arrest you." "You probably should." Thale was quiet for a long moment. "How certain are you about this theory? About the Vryn searching for a genetic cure?" 60%. "Maybe 70. That's not very certain. It's better odds than we have now." Thale pulled up tactical displays. "The hive ship is 3 weeks' travel into Vryn territory. You'd be completely cut off from support. If captured, we can't help you, we know. Most of you will probably die, and we know that too." "Then why do this?" Hana touched the scars on her arm. "Because someone has to. Because sitting here while people die isn't something I can do. Because I'd rather try and fail than never try at all." Thale studied her face, saw the determination that had kept her alive through tiger attacks and death world predators, the stubbornness that made her unstoppable. "I can't officially authorize this," he said finally, "but I can accidentally leave the security codes to a stealth ship in my office. And I can coincidentally be away from the station when you leave. Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just come back alive." They launched 3 days later in a modified stealth ship that Daeun had personally upgraded. The ship was small, cramped, and barely armed. Its only advantage was that it could hide from Vryn sensors better than standard military vessels. The journey took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of moving through space controlled by an enemy that wanted to consume them. They traveled through debris fields from destroyed settlements, past Vryn patrol fleets that passed within kilometers, not knowing prey was right beside them. Every day was tense. Every hour felt like it might be their last. Hana spent the time refining her proposal. What could she offer the Vryn that would make them stop their expansion? What did humans have that other species didn't? The answer, ironically, was suffering. Humans had survived countless diseases through evolution. Their immune systems had adapted to plagues that wiped out entire populations. Their DNA carried the scars of survival. We're offering them our genetic history? Mino asked when she explained. Our diseases? Not the diseases. The solutions. Humans have genetic markers for disease resistance that other species don't. We survived because we adapted or died. Our DNA is proof that life finds a way. And if they use it to make themselves stronger, then we deal with that later. Right now, we need to stop the war. They reached the hive ship on day 21. The vessel was massive, easily 10 kilometers long, and it wasn't built so much as grown. The hull was organic, pulsing with bioluminescence. Smaller Vryn ships came and went like cells in a body. That's terrifying, Cress whispered. Welcome to first contact with a hive mind, Bonwa said. Everything about them violates what we think of as normal. They attached to the hive ship during a feeding cycle. The Vryn brought biological matter aboard in massive quantities, creatures from conquered worlds still alive being absorbed into the collective. It was horrific and efficient. Daeun masked their entry with falsified biological signatures. To the hive ship's sensors, they looked like part of the feeding shipment. Just more organic matter to be consumed. Inside, the ship was alive in ways that made everyone uncomfortable. The walls moved, breathing. The floors were soft, like walking on flesh. Everything was warm and wet and smelled of copper. This is wrong on every level, Minho muttered. Keep moving, Hana said. We need to reach the central neural cluster. They moved through the ship like antibodies through a body. The interior was a maze of organic tunnels and chambers. Vryn drones passed them occasionally but didn't attack. The false biological signatures held. After 6 hours, they reached the core. It was a massive chamber, easily 100 meters across, filled with bioluminescent tissue that pulsed with light. This was the heart of the hive. The queen mind. The moment they entered, Hana felt pressure in her skull. A presence that wasn't physical but was definitely there. Words formed in her mind, not spoken but understood. Small creatures that taste of death worlds. We know you. Hana stepped forward. We come to talk. There is nothing to discuss. You are resources. You will be absorbed. You're searching for a genetic cure, for a disease that's killing your species. The pressure in her skull increased. How do you know this? Because I've seen the pattern of your expansion. You're not conquering. You're desperate. You're consuming other species hoping to find DNA that can save yours. And if this is true, then stop the war. Let us help you. The Queen Mind's response was immediate. Why would prey help predators? Because we're not prey. We're survivors. We understand desperation. We know what it's like to face extinction and refuse to accept it. Images flooded Hana's mind. The Vryn's history. Their species had ruled dozens of star systems once. Then the genetic disease appeared. A flaw in their DNA that caused organ failure, neural degradation, death. They'd tried everything. Genetic engineering, symbiosis, nothing worked. The flaw was too fundamental. In desperation, they'd turned to consuming other species, incorporating alien DNA into their collective, hoping to find a solution, but nothing had worked. They were still dying, just slower. We have consumed thousands of species, the Queen Mind said. None contained what we needed. Why should yours be different? Hana felt the weight of those words. Thousands of species, entire civilizations consumed and destroyed in desperate searching. Because humans are different, she said quietly. We come from a death world. We've survived diseases that would have destroyed most species. Our DNA carries the scars of countless plagues. We adapted or died, and we adapted. She pulled out a data crystal. This contains human genetic information, specifically, markers for disease resistance and immune adaptation. We're offering to share it, to help you find a cure. In exchange for what? Peace. Stop the expansion. Stop consuming other species. Work with us instead of against us. The Queen Mind was silent for a long moment. Hana could feel it considering, weighing options, calculating probabilities. And if your genetic information is insufficient, if it does not contain the cure we need, then we keep trying together, science instead of war, cooperation instead of consumption.